Hello and welcome to Flixplained, the channel where we take your favorite flicks and series and break them down to ensure you don't miss a single detail. Today, we're going to be discussing Netflix's new series, Wednesday. Specifically, 16 facts and Easter eggs from the show that you might have missed on your first watch through. This goes without saying, but if you haven't seen Netflix's new show yet, and you should, this video is still going to contain spoilers. Tim Burton finally produced an Addams Family project. First off, how amazing is it that Tim Burton finally produced an Addams Family project? And on top of that, he was also responsible for directing 4 out of the 8 episodes. I don't know if you know this, but it's been a very long time coming. Ever since the 1991 Addams Family movie was announced, fans have wanted Tim Burton to work on the project. He was initially announced as the director for the 1991 film, but had to turn it down when the timing conflicted with his filming of Batman Returns. Then again, in 2010, we got our hopes up when we found out that Illumination Entertainment purchased the right to the Addams Family drawings, and was producing a movie that was originally going to be stop motion. Once again, the movie was intended to be directed by Tim Burton, but this time instead of conflicting schedules, the concept was simply cancelled. Thankfully, in 2022, we finally got Burton's hands working on an Addams Family series, and it has been very well received by fans, including myself. The show is filled with Poe references. Next up, if you've seen the first season of Wednesday, then you most likely noticed that the show is jam-packed with references to the great Gothic poet, Edgar Allan Poe. Not only was the school that Wednesday attended in the show named the Nevermore Academy, which is a phrase that Poe made very popular, but they also brung up the idea that the writer actually attended the academy, and that's why he referenced Nevermore so much throughout his poetry. And all I can say is that if there was a school for the dark and dreary outcasts, then I feel like Edgar Allan Poe would have fit right in. There were even references to Poe from the boat race that occurred during the Poe Cup. Each of the team's boat was named after or referenced one of his poems. Bianca's boat referenced the Gold Bug, Xavier's boat was named the Amontillado, Wednesday's boat was named the Black Cat, and the 4th boat had the name The Pit and the Pendulum. Snapped twice. Along with references to Poe, Netflix's gothic comedy was also littered with references to the original Addams Family, as well as almost all of the other interpretations that have been released since. For instance, while at Nevermore, Wednesday discovered that there was a secret society known as the Nightshades. This group of students would hold their secret meetings in a room that was hidden away from the rest of the school, behind a statue of Edgar Allan Poe. And in order to get into that room, Wednesday had to solve a riddle, which led her to discover the magic sound that would open the door for her. That sound ended up being 2 snaps, which is a direct reference to the original Addams Family theme song. Jenna Ortega choreographed the big dance. Next, let's talk about that amazing dance scene in episode 4 of the season, and how Jenna Ortega, the actress who portrayed Wednesday, choreographed that scene. During the Raven dance, Wednesday showed up in a gothic-style dress and blew everyone's minds with her wicked dance moves. The dance is set to the song Goo Goo Muck by The Cramps, and in a recent behind-the-scenes interview, Jenna admitted that she was very nervous about the scene, mainly because she choreographed the dance herself. The actress says she took inspiration from old videos of gothic concerts and raves to ensure that she kept it accurate to the character, and it's clear by the audience's reaction that she nailed it. Homages to the 1960s Addams Family. Another amazing detail from the Raven dance scene is the fact that Jenna decided to incorporate not 1, but 2 references in her dance to former Addams Family cast members. The first was spotted by an eagle-eyed fan that noticed for a brief second, you can see Wednesday bust out a move that the 1960s version of the character did in an episode of the show from way back. During season 2, episode 29 of the 1960s Addams Family TV show, Wednesday tried to teach Lurch to dance, and anyone who noticed it most likely freaked out when they saw our new Wednesday break out the classic dance move. On top of that, almost immediately after, the character transitioned into a dance move that was iconically performed by John Astin, who played Gomez in the 1960s TV series. We've seen Pilgrims in the Addams Family before. Now, if you enjoyed watching Wednesday hate on the Pilgrims, then you should know that her time in Jericho wasn't the character's first run-in with the group. In the very first episode of Wednesday, we got to witness a brawl between our main character and 3 normie kids from town. And it all started because Wednesday couldn't resist educating her fellow teens on what the Pilgrims really did. Well, in the older movie, Addams Family Values, there was a scene where Wednesday was supposed to participate in a Thanksgiving play, where she was supposed to portray a Native American having dinner with the Pilgrims. But instead, she ended up delivering an amazing monologue about the cruelty of the Pilgrims. Real Girl Scouts. Next up, I want to discuss a quote that Wednesday used in the 3rd episode of the series when she said, "I could eat Girl Scouts for breakfast." This was a one-liner that didn't stir up any response, nor did it need to. But fans of the Addams Family movie from 1991 might have recognized that it was a direct reference to a scene from that movie. There was a point in the film when a Girl Scout approached Wednesday's lemonade stand to ask if it was made out of real lemons. Well, later in the movie, Wednesday approached the Girl Scouts selling cookies and asked them if they happened to be made out of real Girl Scouts. It was one of those simple references that we can't get enough of. Pugsley's introduction felt familiar. Up next, let's talk about how familiar Pugsley's introduction to the series was. In the opening sequence of the 1st episode, we see Wednesday opening up a locker at her school and finding her younger brother Pugsley tied up, gagged with an apple, and stuffed inside. In this case, it was because of school bullies that would soon feel the wrath of Wednesday. However, this wasn't the first time that fans of the family have seen Pugsley like this. In the 1991 movie, The Addams Family, the first time we saw Pugsley on screen, he was tied up with an apple in his mouth. Only, in that case, it was because Wednesday wanted to shoot an arrow at him. Wednesday is an amazing archer. This brings us to our next point. Wednesday is shown to be an amazing archer in the Netflix series. This is nothing new for the character though, as we've seen her put her archery skills to use in various other versions of the Addams Family, including the 1991 movie and its sequel Addams Family Values. Though I can't say that any other version of Wednesday ever had the dead-on accuracy that Jenna's portrayal had. The Gargoyles. Next up, did you know the Gargoyles in the Quad of Nevermore Academy each depict a different group or type of student that attends the academy? In the very first episode, we learned that the academy is home to all sorts of outcasts, from Gorgons to werewolves, and according to the production designer, Mark Scruton, each one of these groups is represented by their own gargoyle. In fact, this was one of the first big hints that was dropped about the series, with Scruton saying, "There's a big plot point hidden in there," when talking about the gargoyles. Ignatius It. Now, you might not have spotted this next one, but if you look close enough in the Nightshade's secret meeting place, you might have seen another member of the Addams Family. In the background, hanging on the wall, is a portrait of Ignatius It. And anyone who saw the original Addams Family TV series would recognize the name from the original lineup. Who was Ophelia? He wasn't the only one who made an appearance though, believe it or not. We also heard the name of Wednesday's aunt. The 1964 series introduced the world to Morticia's sister Ophelia, and you might recall that the dorm that Wednesday was assigned to was her mother's old room in Ophelia Hall, a direct reference to the character from the old series. Miss Thornhill is a familiar face. It didn't take an eagle-eyed fan to catch this next one, but if you recognize Miss Thornhill, it's most likely because she played Wednesday Addams in the 1991 movie and its sequel. Christina Ricci is arguably the most famous and well-known actress to portray the character. Although after watching Netflix's Wednesday, she might have a new competitor with this newer generation of audience members. Either way, both Ricci and Ortega crushed the role in their own very unique ways. The origin of the name. Next up, let's talk about the origin of Wednesday's name and how Morticia finally let us know why they chose to name her after a day of the week. You see, when the Addams Family was originally created back in the 1930s. However, it was time the creator decided to give them distinct names. According to the author, and Morticia, Wednesday's name comes from an old nursery rhyme titled Monday's Child. The rhyme is simple and reads, "Monday's child is fair of face, Tuesday's child is full of grace, Wednesday's child is full of woe, Thursday's child has far to go, Friday's child is loving and giving, Saturday's child works hard for a living, and the child born on the Sabbath day is bonny and blithe, good and gay." Morticia explained that the line, "Wednesday's child is full of woe," seemed to be the perfect fit for her daughter. The showrunners' names appeared in town. Next up, if you know the names of the other showrunners that helped bring Wednesday to life, then you might have recognized them making an appearance in the town of Jericho. Not only was the town filled with shops that were taken out of the original Addams Family cartoons, but if you look closely at the window outside of Dr. Kimbart's office, you'll see the last names of the two showrunners, Alfred Goh and Miles Miller. The weather vanes in the coffee shop. Last but not least, not only did the town of Jericho have references to the showrunners, but the Weather Vanes coffee shop where the villainous Tyler worked at was full of references to Tim Burton. If you noticed, hanging on the walls in the background of the shop were metal weather vanes, hence the name of the coffee shop. Well, it turns out that those weather vanes are all a reference to Burton's previous projects. Those ones shaped like the Headless Horseman, referencing Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, and another shaped like Willy Wonka's hat from when Burton worked on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That's not all though. In the taxidermy shop, Uriah's Heap, you can also spot a couple of taxidermied mice that are dressed up to look like Tim Burton's characters. What was your favorite fact or Easter egg from Wednesday? Did you find one that we might have missed? Make sure that you let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to check out our channel for other videos about Wednesday and all of your favorite shows and movies.